to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a striking piece of ancient history, the Book of Amos. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, a text from the 8th century BC has absolutely nothing to say about today's issues like wealth inequality, social justice, or religious hypocrisy, well, think again. Let's get right into it.
Hello, everyone. This is TN Inside. Let's begin by reading today's scripture passage from the book of Amos, chapters 1 to 5.
Okay, to really grasp what's going on here, we have to look at the incredible contrast between the messenger and his audience. On one side, we have Amos. He isn't a priest. He's not part of some professional prophetic guild. Actually, he's just a humble shepherd and a sycamore fig farmer from a tiny southern town called Tekoa. And on the other side, his audience. Amos gets sent up north to deliver a really harsh, unapologetic message to the wildly wealthy, powerful, and luxurious elite of northern Israel. It's essentially the ultimate underdog story, right? This unlikely working-class messenger stepping up to confront a booming hedonistic society. Now, the context of this era is absolutely fascinating because it establishes a time of false prosperity. Back during King Jeroboam's reign, right around 760 BC, geopolitics were surprisingly working in Israel's favor. The mighty Assyrian Empire was dealing with its own internal decline, which basically gave Israel a long, temporary break from foreign threats. And because of this peace, northern Israel experienced a massive economic boom and a huge surge in military strength. But here's the catch. This sudden, explosive wealth created a devastating social divide. It's a timeless human story. The rich got much richer, the poor were completely crushed, and a society experiencing total economic success somehow entirely lost its moral compass. Before Amos even addresses Israel directly, he uses this brilliant circling target technique. He starts by calling out the savage, bloodthirsty war crimes of all the neighboring nations, setting up a universal standard of justice. And the specific horrors he details are pretty shocking. You have Tyre breaking a brotherly covenant. You have Ammon literally ripping open pregnant women in Gilead just to expand their territory, which is a completely barbaric, hate-driven act. And Moab burning the bones of Edom's king to ash. By listing out these atrocities in Damascus, Gaza, and the rest, Amos makes it crystal clear. God is watching everyone, and he holds the entire world accountable to basic human decency. So why is Israel's judgment so severe? Well, the crucial point lies in how God views his unique relationship with them. In chapter 3, God says he knew only Israel out of all the families of the earth. But the Hebrew word used here for know, which translates to yada, doesn't just mean basic intellectual awareness. It signifies a deeply intimate, almost marital-like relationship. God loved them exclusively. So because he knew Israel intimately like a spouse, their betrayal was so much worse. They weren't just breaking a set of rules, they were breaking a heart. And that made them fully, totally accountable for their actions. Let's move closer to the center of that target and look at the absolute rot going on within Israel itself. It essentially infected three main pillars of their society. Economically, you had this extreme luxury sitting right alongside massive wealth inequality. Judicially, the courts were completely corrupt. Judges were taking bribes and literally selling out innocent, righteous people for the price of a pair of sandals. Just think about that. Ruining a human life for the ancient equivalent of cheap flip-flops? And religiously, the decay was staggering. Fathers and sons were using the same temple prostitutes, completely mocking God's holiness. They were even forcing devoted Nazarites to drink wine and actively silencing the prophets who tried to speak up. This incredible moral bankruptcy brings us to one of the most startling, vivid metaphors Amos uses in the entire book, the cows of Bashan. Now, Bashan was an area famous for its incredibly lush pastures and fat, pampered livestock. Amos uses this exact phrase to address the wealthy, elite women of Samaria. Why? Because they were living in extreme luxury by relentlessly crushing and oppressing the poor just to fund their lavish lifestyles. He warns these oppressive elites that their time is up, and they will soon be dragged away into exile with literal hooks in their noses, exactly like animals being led away to slaughter by the Assyrians. What makes this entire situation even more tragic is that God actually tried to wake them up. There's this tragic sequence of escalating disasters he sent to correct them, and they ignored every single one. First, there was famine, which the text poetically calls cleanness of teeth. Then came severe drought, Third, blight and mildew destroying their crops. Fourth, terrible plagues, very much like the ones sent to Egypt. And fifth, a sudden, devastating overthrow like Sodom and Gomorrah. Yet they stubbornly ignored all 5 warnings. This all culminates in a haunting description, where the survivors of the coming judgment are described as merely a firebrand plucked from the burning. And that brings us to what might be the most shocking part of the text. It is absolutely staggering to realize that God completely despises and rejects their religious festivals, their assemblies, and their offerings. He even says he hates the noise of their worship songs. And you might wonder, why? It's because of their extreme hypocrisy. They were putting on these massive, flawless outward religious displays, but their everyday society was utterly devoid of compassion and justice for the needy. Their religion had become nothing more than an empty, theatrical performance. The ultimate consequence of this deep-rooted hypocrisy comes down to one chilling number, 10. This number represents the horrifying survival rate of Israel's impending judgment. Amos prophesies that a city that marched out 1,000 soldiers will have only 100 return, and a town that sent out 100 will be left with only 10. This numerical devastation is basically a heartbreaking lamentation, a funeral dirge sung over virgin Israel. It really emphasizes the sheer, catastrophic scale of the Assyrian exile that's heading their way. But right in the middle of all this doom and gloom, there is an incredibly powerful call to action. It's the famous climactic plea of Amos chapter 5, "But let justice roll on like a river, righteousness like a never-failing stream." God doesn't want their empty sacrifices. What he demands is that genuine social justice and righteous living flow continuously and abundantly in their society. This beautiful, life-giving standard is what actually matters, and it far outweighs the value of any hollow religious ritual. We're going to wrap up this explainer with a final, provocative thought that challenges us directly today. If our outward rituals and appearances are totally flawless, but our hearts lack compassion, is true justice actually flowing in our lives? It's a timeless challenge, really, pushing us to look past our own superficial practices and examine the real moral core of what we do every single day. Are we just going through the motions, or are we letting righteousness stream through everything we do? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating history with me. Keep seeking that justice, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.